Welcome back. Today I have a couple of subscriber games that I've played against you that I'd like to go through, and hopefully I'll learn something. That is, after all, the entire point of this channel for me to get better at chess, and as a side benefit, hopefully some of you will also pick up something as well. Or if you see something that I miss, you can let me know, and then that'll make you feel good about yourself for helping somebody. Let's take a look at the first game. The game review says my opponent didn't make any mistakes, blunders, or misses. Not too long ago, I upset one of my subscribers, who is no longer one of my subscribers, by saying I wasn't going to go through the game, and I don't want to do that. I don't want to upset you guys. I didn't know that it was going to say no mistakes before I got here, so I am going to look at it, but I'm just going to go to the point at which I made my mistakes here and see if I can learn something. According to the move list, nobody made a mistake or blunder or inaccuracy until move 15. Wait, inaccuracies aren't listed over there. Inaccuracies are listed over here. Okay, yes, no inaccuracies until my move 14, okay. I had a very slight edge here, and I should have played h6, okay, because their queen and bishop are lined up here, and they can get this pawn for free. Okay, I get that. Not only would h6 have threatened their dark squared bishop, which it probably just would have moved here. The engine says they would have gone back to d2, but in my experience when I play this, the opponent always goes here, trying to bait me into playing the g-pawn, so it kind of makes this pointless. But in this case, it's not pointless because I'm about to lose my h-pawn. If I play one of the other moves, looks like they're going to take the h-pawn. Okay, I understand that, but this was just inaccurate. I put this here lining up with their queen. They are supposed to take this pawn. I'm going to move my king over, and then they're going to move their queen up, so it won't be in line with my rook anymore. Okay, I understand that. But we're still even, so it's not, that inaccuracy wasn't a problem. But my opponent did see that I had lined the rook up with the queen, and they moved it back. We're still very close to even. Well, for a second, it said g6 was my best move, but h6 is better. For the same reason, they can still take my h7 pawn. Well, like I said, anytime that I have played the h6 pawn to get rid of a bishop here, it always goes back this way to continue patrolling this diagonal. Oh, it's changed its mind and said g6 is better now. Okay, but if I play h6, it's not going to go back there. At least the people that I play, this opponent I think was rated higher than me in Rapid and Bullet and so on. But I should have played h6 not to worry about where this dark squared bishop is going, but to keep from losing this pawn. Although in this case, only one of the lines has them taking my h-pawn. Okay. I didn't like this bishop being here. I guess I could have threatened it this way. It says no. It says one of my better moves is bishop to g4. Oh, because nothing's guarding the knight. But it says they just would have hopped it in here and threatened my queen. I don't want to encourage that, do I? But I do understand this. Okay, but I didn't. I played this trying to get rid of the dark squared bishop. Now they're supposed to take this pawn. Or the bishop. Wait, they're supposed to take the bishop? Okay. Well, I would have taken back, and then they would have taken this pawn. All right. Well, my opponent didn't want to lose their dark squared bishop, so they moved it back. We're still very close to even. I should have played h6 again, or g6, but I didn't. Wait, no, I did. I did play g6. Why is that inaccurate? Okay, I did play g6. The problem, the problem is that now they can put this bishop back, and they did. But we're still within +1 and -1. Now here is the mistake apparently that lost me the game. I played rook f to e8. Well, because my rook's under attack. It says my best move is bishop to g4. Okay, well, I tried. And no, I didn't understand any of the other mistakes. I just understood the first one, where I played f6 instead of h6. I get that, but only because it would have saved me a pawn. But that wasn't the mistake that lost me the game, and I do not understand any of the other things that lost me the game. I've probably cut out a long section here because it was very frustrating and took up a lot of time, and I need that time to go through the other subscriber game because I only have so much time a day. And this is one of the reasons that I insist on unrated games against subscribers. If you would like to play me, challenge me to a daily game. Or if you're on Lichess, challenge me to a correspondence game. And make sure that it's unrated. You can pick the number of days. That's up to you and your schedule, how much time you're willing to commit to the game. But make sure it's unrated because I have a lot of opponents, subscribers that are better than I am at chess, and they play without mistakes, and I lose those games pretty badly and don't learn anything from them. So thank you for the game. Let's play another one. If you want to, send me a challenge, and maybe I'll learn something from that one. The other subscriber game that I wanted to go through today was against Vedantbaj, who, if you've been following my channel, you have seen this name before. We have now played each other 20 times. If I'm not mistaken, Vedantbaj won the last 2 or 3 games, one of which I resigned while I was ahead and didn't realize it. So that was embarrassing. So I decided I'm not going to resign anymore. If you get ahead of me, I'm going to play it to the end and let you checkmate me because I know that makes you feel good. So This one, as you can see from the graph, I did not lose. But let's see if we can learn something. I honestly don't remember how this game started out. Let's see. I played e4 and my opponent played the St. George defense. All right. If you're new to chess and stumbled on my channel by accident and somehow made it 5 minutes into this video or however long it is, one reason that's not a great opening is because you're supposed to try to occupy and control center squares, and playing this doesn't do much. It is an actual opening. It's been named, but you don't see it very often. As far as I can tell, the only point of this move is to keep any of my pieces from going to that square, and secondly, to eventually support a b5 push, which also doesn't control or occupy any center squares. It does mean I'm not playing the Vienna game, which is what I've been trying to practice, so I have to think of something else, and since my opponent made no move to occupy or control these squares, I played d4. Stockfish apparently does know about opening principles. The top 4 moves listed here are d6, e6, d5, and e5, occupying and or controlling some of the center squares. But my opponent's 5th best move is what they played, which is h6. Which, again, doesn't occupy or control any center squares, but maybe they're trying to play is that the crab opening when you play then g5 and f5? I don't know. I don't know very many of the meme openings, which is what I call these things. In my opinion, they're not serious openings. You can still win with them, especially at my level, because we don't know what we're doing. But I call them meme openings because I try to play at least openings that would be recognizable to, grandmasters and things that might be played in serious chess, because as much as I have fun with chess, I try to be serious with it too. All the moves recommended for me are normal development moves like knight to f3, bishop to d3, bishop to e3, c4, and c3. And I played c3, which supports this pawn. It leaves some space for this bishop to come out, although I suspect they were about to play d5 to prevent the bishop from coming out. But they didn't play b5, they played c5, and the engine says I should take it. Oh, come on. This reminds me of the rook on the open file problem that I've been having. Whenever it's time to put one of my rooks on one of the open files or files that is about to become open, I always pick the wrong one. And the same is true when it comes to diverting a center pawn to capture another pawn. It is a free pawn, but it takes one of my center pawns and puts it over there. And sometimes that's good, like here, but a lot of times it's not. A lot of times that's the whole point of a pawn push like this, is to divert one of my center pawns. So I had no idea that I should have taken that. It's already defended. I want to develop in castle, and it just so happens that playing knight to f3 defends that pawn a little extra, so I was fine with it. Now, I think my opponent wanted to go ahead and push this and take some more space, but they can't right now because of my bishop, so they played b5. Okay, I didn't know that was a mistake. I did know that it was supporting this, and so Stockfish again says I should just take that pawn, or push past it, or play a4, or bishop to f4. Okay, well, that would be a normal developmental move. Or bishop to d3. What? That's my 3rd best move? Why would I put my pawn here when it's so obvious that they're about to put their... why would I put my bishop there? They're just about to play c5. C4. Oh, it says they wouldn't. Well, they would. I'm 99% certain that if I put my bishop on d3, they would play c4, and then I would have to move the bishop again. Well, I made a developmental move, which is, it not only adds another defender to that pawn, but it, gets a piece off my back rank, which is kind of the idea of the opening. My opponent played what I had assumed that they were going to play. It's not their best move. They're supposed to take here, and I would take back, but they pushed forward. Why else would they have played b5 if they weren't intending on putting that pawn there? That makes total sense to me. Okay, I'm supposed to play b3 or a4 to attack those 2 pawns. I wanted to go about with my development, and I went on with my development. That also helps protect this square, or when I move up like this. Not that I would have needed it because that square is already defended twice, but it is development. That's the point of the opening in my mind, is to occupy or control center squares, get pieces off the back rank, and then castle. That's why I chose that move. My opponent, who should have played d5 earlier, did play d5 this time, but it wasn't among their top 3, and I should just take it, or play a4, almost as good. Okay, now here I cannot explain this next move. I played queen to c2. I don't remember deciding on that move. My knight was already defending that, so I didn't have to worry there. My knight and my pawn and my queen were already defending there, so this doesn't help with that. I guess it defends that pawn, but nobody was attacking that pawn. Yeah, so I can't explain that, why I played there. Except getting pieces off the back rank. All I have to do now is get this bishop off the back rank, and I'm ready to castle. My opponent's supposed to play e6, which would help defend this pawn because the engine thinks I should have, taken that earlier, and I didn't. But they played e5. Okay. Well, I didn't know I was up plus 1.5 or plus 2 point something like the game review thought. I thought I might be up a little bit because that's a free pawn. Oh, Stockfish says I should take it with my pawn. Well, I wanted to, if as much as possible, to keep those two side by side and not doubled up, so I took with my knight, which isn't as good. And notice now, all of the moves recommended by the engine for my opponent are piece moves, because they haven't developed any pieces. All their pieces are unmoved. They've only moved pawns in this game. They did move a piece, but it wasn't one of those top 5. It was protecting this pawn, which they didn't do on the last turn with their e-pawn. Again, I'm supposed to play b3, but as I said, I was trying to develop my pieces, not attack their structure, not start a trading pawn battle or anything like that. I'm trying to stick with opening principles as much as possible. It's my 3rd best move. Okay, now I'm ready to castle. My opponent needs to get it this knight out here or this knight out here. I'm not sure why this move was counted as inaccurate for them, because it is developing one of the pieces that they need so that they can castle. It's a problem because I can play a4. All right. Well, it looked like they were coming after this knight, which would force me to double the pawns here. I was about to castle, but I thought, what if I supported that knight this way? And if they didn't take it, I could put the knight back behind the f pawn before I castled. That's why I played f4. It's my 2nd best move. Again, I have no idea. I'm up almost +2. I just got that 1 extra pawn, right? I don't understand why that's supposed to go back to the back. It's changed its mind. Now they're supposed to take on e4. That pawn's pretty well defended, so I'm not sure why they're supposed to capture it now. Or it's just as good, though, to put this light squared bishop back on c8. That's the square that it came from. Or rook to a7. That's a7, right? That's what Stockfish recommends. Okay, well, that seems like something that my daughter would play, and my daughter's rated 400, or 300. I don't know why that would be good. My opponent played their top move here, which was to take my e-pawn. Stockfish says it doesn't really care which piece I take back with. It might be slightly better to take with the queen, but I didn't want to get my queen out in the front, so I took with the knight, and that is immediately threatening this bishop. The engine says you could just leave it there, maybe develop a piece and get ready to castle, or if you're scared, you could move it back to c7, or you could just put this one up on d5. They weren't supposed to take here, but they did. Again, when it comes to taking back, Stockfish says it doesn't matter. Pick either one of those pawns and take back. I chose this one because their queen is there, and I thought about maybe putting a rook on on the open file facing down the queen. But yeah, it doesn't really matter. Engine seems to very slightly prefer the f pawn, but I took back with the d pawn. I'm still 1 pawn ahead. So why am I up +3? I think I'm up +3 because they have a pawn across the halfway point as well, but I have a pawn across the halfway point in the center, and it's restricting squares around their king, like the normal development square of their knight. It's protected, and I'm controlling other squares, inside. Well, those are the same squares, right? But this bishop's on a pretty decent diagonal. I'm about to put my rook on the open file, but that says like +1 to me, +1.5, not +4. They are supposed to get the knight out so that they can prepare to castle. They did that. I almost castled here, and I almost put this rook on the open file. Putting the rook on the open file is my 2nd best move. Castling is my 3rd best move, but I found my best move because I thought if I castle now, they're going to castle. That's what it says would happen. I also thought if I played rook to d1, they're just going to move their queen. It says they wouldn't. It says they would block with their bishop, but I thought they would just move their queen, one of those places, and then we'd be where we started, except I would have control of the open file. But I did find my best move because it will prevent them from castling. And since they had taken their time developing their pieces, and we're on move 13 now, I'm about to play move 13, and they've just now prepared to castle. I ruined their right to castle. I guess it's punishing them for waiting so long, because they had opportunities. I wasn't coming after them. You saw Stockfish telling me to go after them with b3 and a4 and try to break stuff open and have a bunch of pawn trades. I wasn't doing that. I was trying to develop my pieces and castle, and my opponent wasn't. So they had their chance, and now they lost it. That was the idea here. I'm glad it was my best move. They have to move the king. Now Stockfish says I should castle over here in front of all these pawns. They're coming down. That surprises me. Bishop to f3. Oh, attacks the rook. Okay. Oh, maybe that's why they should have moved it to a7 earlier. It says if I did that, they would just put this knight here. Okay, well, that's probably why I didn't do it. I try not to make moves that are really easily defended against, if I can help it. But that puts me at +4. It's only +3 if I castle, which I did. Okay. That was the whole point of my development and so on. I really like this knight down here. G6 is my opponent's best move. I assume the idea of that is to hide the king here so that the rook can get out. And the engine wants me to start throwing forward the pawns in front of my king. I'm not going to do that 99% of the time. I'm also not sure about f5. They have 1, 2, 3 pieces guarding that square. Oh, but I would have 3 pieces guarding that square too. Oh, it's changed this my rook a to d1. Okay, I get that. I get that. But instead, I finally played b3, which it wanted me to do earlier. Now that my king is castled, now that my pieces are developed, now I'm fine doing some pawn trading. It is their best move to play knight to f5. It goes after this, trying to get rid of the knight on the outpost. But in case I don't take, it's going after this undefended bishop. The engine says my best move is to just drop this bishop back. I'm not sure about that, because it says if I did that, they would take here. And I wouldn't take back with the pawn. Then I would put the rook there and pin their knight. What? And then it says they would just block there, and then I would get that knight for free. Okay. Oh, because I would have two pieces attacking it. Okay, I think I get that. I thought it was best to take here because I thought if they, if I let them take there by moving my bishop back, I'm going to take back with the pawn and they'd pick up an extra pawn. And that's all that I'm ahead right now is the pawn. But I didn't think about once they took there, I could put the rook here and then not lose the pawn. I just took it because I figured that's pretty easily dealt with, I thought. Queen to b2, is that my best move? No, rook a to d1. All right. I did consider that several times. I just thought in this case, why not keep my queen for a second? So that's just as good. I don't know why, but the engine wants them to play queen to e8. Well, it's sure changing its mind a lot. Or develop their knight finally. Or king to g7, which I think was the reason for moving the g-pawn. Or queen to c7. Those two queen moves look like all they do is target this well-defended pawn. Yeah, so I don't understand that. Okay, I do understand king to g7, but not king to g8. King to g7 lets the rook out. King to g8, what does that do? I don't know. My opponent went in here, and the engine didn't like that. It puts me above +3 again, but I understand this because back here on f5, their bishop is on these two diagonals, right? One of them's kind of long and one of them's a little shorter, but just by this one move, they've put their bishop on a much longer diagonal, and they're still on this other one, right? The b1 to h7 diagonal. But the h1 to a8 diagonal is longer than the other one they were on. So I understand that. Centralizing the bishop, putting it on two long diagonals, I get that. I'm supposed to play rook a to d1 again, or take this pawn. Well, I did take the pawn. I thought, if they took back, I can take back, and then I'm pointed down there. They're supposed to move their king. They did. Okay, good job. I can explain my next couple of moves, and it's because of this. I didn't know that was their best move. I thought they were just going about with their plan, but I thought it might have been a mistake because of where my queen was. Since I just took this pawn and they didn't take back, I thought, well, I can just take that, and then I'm 2 pawn moves away from them being in check, right? I move those 2 pawns, and they're in check, and then their rook's back there, because they might get out of check this way by accident, and then I'll take the rook. I don't know, but I pick up another pawn for it, so that's fine. They're supposed to take back this time. They weren't last time, but they're supposed to take back this time because I'm up 3 pawns now, but they didn't take back. It says if they don't take back, they should make a queen move. Queen to e7, queen to f8, rook to e8, knight to d7. All those are secondary to taking this pawn. My opponent played their 5th best move that finally they developed their last knight, their last minor piece on move 19. If you're still learning chess, my advice is that's too late to develop your last minor piece, unless you've been under attack. But again, in this case, I haven't really been attacking them. I was just trying to develop and set up my own stuff. My only attacks have been these pawn moves here, which they could have fought back, but they waited all that time to develop their pieces while they were pushing those pawns. I don't know why I'm ahead +4, +5. I'm only up 3 pawns. Well, remember the thing I said about moving those 2 pawns? I decided to do that. I moved this one. So now this one's protected, and now I'm 1 move away from check, and that's going to be a fork. Okay, my opponent saw that. The engine says not to worry about it. The engine says just to play the knight over here, or queen to e7, queen to c8. Oh, queen to c8 would... No, that pawn's defended. I don't know what queen to c8 would do, or take this pawn. Well, my opponent saw what I was planning and decided to get, solve that problem. I would say good for them, even though the engine didn't like it. They at least saw what I was going for. I did see earlier when they put this bishop on this long diagonal that it was, pointed at this rook. So I thought, I'm up 3 pawns. It might be time to trade off a couple of these minor pieces. So I went there. It is their best move to take and my best move to take back. And I've got a bishop to the knight, So as some of these pawns clear off, my bishop should be a little stronger. My opponent's supposed to play queen to e7 or rook to e8. I don't know why. Or queen to e8. This pawn seems fairly well defended right now, though. I don't know why it's important to put one of those pieces on the e file. I have no idea. And they did play one of those. They put the rook on the e file, so good for them. Oh, I'm supposed to start advancing this passed pawn. I should have thought of that. It's not passed right now. But if I move it, it is. I can create a passed pawn just by playing b6, and then I can protect it. I didn't think of that just yet. I didn't play any of those moves. It wants me to put this rook over here behind this pawn, but instead I just brought that rook back. Queen to c7 is their top move. That's what they played. I assume it's going after this undefended pawn. And I'm supposed to play b6 again. And then they would take this undefended pawn. Wow, that arrow didn't go forward, did it? Yeah, they're aiming here, so I should just push this. And then they would take that one, and then I would threaten their queen, and then they would come in here. And then what would I do? Push that again? It doesn't say that for sure, but I played my second best move, which is to protect the pawn that they were aiming at. Now, on my opponent's next move, it's not listed as in their top 5, but I missed the point of it. When my opponent hopped their knight in here, I thought it was doing 2 things. I thought, 1, it's adding a defense to their a6 pawn in case I take, and in case they wanted to move their rook at some point. And number 2, I thought it was maybe blocking my c-pawn from moving forward. And I probably don't want to trade off my bishop for it. It doesn't say to trade off my bishop for it. I didn't notice what they were really after. What they were really after was d3. That's why one of my moves here is rook f to d1, or queen to a3, or rook c to d1, or queen to d4. All of those moves keep them from forking me here. Stockfish is seeing that. My top move is to push this pawn again, which threatens their queen immediately, and they would have to get out of the way, and then I would play one of those other moves. I didn't see that they were aiming in here. I just thought, hey, you know, if they want to trade off over there, let's go for it. And I did. They're supposed to take back with the rook, or move their king to g8. What? Oh, right, I don't understand that. Well, my opponent had made a plan, and they decided to do it anyway, and they did. And at this point, I realized I should have asked myself a few more questions when they put that knight on c5, because I'd had no idea they were going there, and I felt a little dumb. I thought maybe I got overconfident and lost this game, just like I did in the last couple against this same opponent. But not too long ago, I think it might have been in a blitz game, I had forked my opponent's rooks. I don't remember exactly where, but I think it was down, you know, on their back rank. They had their 2 rooks at the right distance apart, and I put my knight there, forking them, and I thought I was going to get one of their rooks. But what they did was they found a way to save both of them. They were able to bring one down and check me, and then when I got out of check, they were able to move their other rook. I think moved it over to threaten my knight. But they got out of the fork. And so I started looking for a way to do that here. Thought, what? Okay, I can't check them. Certainly not with either one of these 2 pieces. But what if I could do something that, you know, caused them some consternation? That gets my queen out of this fork, and they're not going to take my rook now because then I would get their queen for free. Well, I thought, well, what if they traded queens there? That'd be okay because I'm up 4 pawns. And if they did, then this pawn moves over, threatening their rook. And I don't know what their rook would do at that point. It might come down here and take my a pawn, but then I get my rook out of this problem. It does turn out to be my only move that keeps me at +4. So I'm glad I found it. Now what they're supposed to do is put this rook on c8 to protect the queen. Since I would take the queen, they would take back, and then I would get my rook out of the fork and get it on an open file here. But instead, maybe they realized it wasn't a good idea for them to trade queens right now because they're down 4 pawns, so they went over there. I thought that was pretty good. You know, now they have 2 pieces on this front pawn, and I can't defend that one. The reason that's bad, and it's not an inaccuracy, I think that's a blunder because it took us from +4 to +8 or 9. It's because I can take this. I didn't see it immediately. Okay, so I think this might be a lesson too. Because they moved here, my vision starts at that square and goes this way. Like my vision goes kind of in an angle or a cone away from, that's in the same direction that they moved from the square that they started on. And I've noticed this in other games too, that I didn't see this because the motion was this way. So I'm looking, you know, at these things over here. So I thought I needed to protect this pawn. Also, the reason I had put my queen down there was to get my rook out of the fork. So I thought I can solve 2 problems at once. I can protect this pawn and get my rook out of the fork. That's not one of my top 5 moves, so we're back down to under +4 or +3 point something. Now, they need to play king to g8 to defend that pawn, or rook to f8 to defend that pawn, or king to g7 to defend that pawn, or rook to g8. I don't know what rook to g8 would do. I guess it would let me take the pawn and then they could block. King to h8 would let me take the pawn, and it says I would still take it. All right, but instead they went here. Remember what I said about my vision over here when the queen went this way, and so I started looking, you know, down in that angle. When the rook went here, I started looking in this area, and that pawn's right there. So I saw it this time. It is still my best move, but the reason I didn't see it last time was because the queen went over there and kind of, as a decoy, a distraction, moving in the wrong direction. This time the rook is moving in the wrong direction, but it's so close to that pawn, so my vision is right here in this area, and I saw it. Okay, I need to keep that in mind. Maybe some of you do this too, but it's clear that that's what happened here. So just because an opponent moves a certain piece from a certain place to another certain place doesn't mean I can't look at the rest of the board. I should have looked at the rest of the board in the last turn, but this time I saw it because that rook moved. They only have 1 legal move here. And it looks like it is my best move to, nope, it's changed its mind. It's one of my best moves to check here. The whole idea is that then I might get this pawn unless they come up to protect it. You know, I thought if they went over to g8, I would get that pawn, but they came over here to protect it. It's one of my best moves to play this. I'm threatening something over here. My opponent's best move is to play rook to g8 to guard against that. They played their second best move, which was to guard against it this way. And of course, the knight is defended by the queen. But that does allow me to take that pawn with my pawn. Is that my best move? No. My best move is to check here on e7, but it's my second best move to take that pawn. They basically have to take it with their knight to avoid the mating sequence. But now I check them here again, and they have to move away from the knight, and then I can take it. So I did check them there. They had to move away from the knight, and then I take the knight. All right. So now we're in a mating sequence anyway. Okay, their best move is to take this pawn, which directly threatens my queen. But it says, wait. It says if they took that pawn, I would play rook to f8 check, and then they would take my rook. And then I would check here, bishop to d4, and they would have to block with the queen. Oh my, that's nasty. Okay, well, my opponent didn't see this, but I can guarantee that if they did see it, I would not have seen this and this. My opponent played this move here, which looks like tied for second place. At the time, I thought it was just attacking the bishop, which didn't make sense. But I think what it was doing is blocking what Stockfish says is my next move, rook to f7. Wait, if I played rook to f7, they would get this. So I wouldn't play rook to f7. Yeah, I wouldn't have played that, because not only would it undefend this other rook, but this bishop's not defended. I just thought I can defend that bishop by capturing the pawn with check. So that's what I did. Oh, and the game review said that was best? It was my second best move. Okay. My opponent played here and resigned. Now, the engine here says I have a mating sequence. Well, it changed its mind for a second. It said mate in 18, but now it's down to mate in 26. That means it's found a way for black to delay it that long. But it has found a forced checkmating sequence. I haven't, but I am up 8 points of material now. Because I was up 3 or 4 earlier when I, was able to, this one pawn was able to get a bunch of pawns, right? And then over here I was able to get a couple more plus the knight. Well, my time is up now. I've got to stop this, bring this to a close, but I feel like I did learn a couple of things here. One is the thing about the vision that I talked about. When my opponent moves a piece, my eyes tend to start around its starting square and go in the direction that it moved. Not exactly that direction, but in that area, right? It's kind of an expanding range there around where they've moved. That's why I missed capturing that f7 pawn, because their queen moved over there. So I need to remind myself during games when I catch my vision following the piece that they just moved to also glance around the rest of the board. I don't remember what the second thing was that I was going to say. Oh, yeah, I do. I don't know exactly where they went wrong in this game, because you saw at the beginning the evaluation just crept up. It just crept up. It just crept up. There wasn't a huge mistake or blunder. In fact, the only blunder listed for my opponent in this entire game was this. Playing the e5 pawn, which gave up a pawn on move 7. But that didn't take us to +2. That took us to 1 point something. But my point was that that move didn't really lose them the game. It just made it harder for them to win it. So there wasn't really a point at which it went wrong here. Not one thing like hanging a queen or giving up a knight or something. So how can my opponent fix this? Or you if you play like them? And I'm going to go back to the very beginning really quick and just say, if you're watching this and you're still struggling trying to figure out chess concepts, I want to leave you with this. Don't play that. Don't play that. Don't play this on your first and second moves like my opponent did. Unless you're just having fun. Play whatever opening you want. I'm not trying to say I'm your boss. You have to do what I say. But if you want to win against an opponent who's really trying to stick with opening principles and, trying to get better like me, I would recommend not playing this. I think it's a better idea to make the moves that control and occupy center squares. That's why if you watch games by grandmasters, when one of them plays this, the other one almost always plays this. Sometimes you'll see the Sicilian, sometimes you'll see the French, but it's always one of these 3 pawns, and it's always either occupying or controlling center squares. Almost always. And there's a reason for that. It's because it's tried and tested, and when you start off like this, you're just making it harder for yourself. And then if you back that up by playing that on your next move, you're controlling a couple of squares, but they're not really important squares. Certainly not right now. And so you see that the evaluation doesn't give me a huge advantage at these points, but it's definitely saying play some center pawns here. And then if you don't, again, I should have taken the pawn, but I didn't know. but I started developing a piece. This is the next thing that I would recommend, is to develop pieces instead of just pushing pawns. My opponent pushed another pawn here. I got another piece out. And I know that's counted as inaccurate, but you saw that later in the game, my opponent still had all these pieces on the back rank and couldn't castle until it was too late, when I was able to check down there and force their king to move, because right now they're just pushing pawns. Look, they pushed another pawn. And then when I got another piece out, they pushed another pawn. And I got another piece out. And they pushed another pawn. So we're finished with move 7, and my opponent has only played pawn moves. So I don't necessarily think that the blunder here was giving away this one free pawn, and then later I was able to capitalize on that. No, I think the blunder here was playing a weak and inferior opening. Hopefully that helps. And if you happen to see something that I missed or understand something that I didn't, because in several of those places I said I have no idea why that's the best move, then feel free to tell me in the comments. I'll appreciate it. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you next time.